Welcome, everybody, to the webinar. We're going to talk about scalping, of course, as you know. Today's topic is scalping here, and we're going to talk about scalping on the brain. What does scalping do to your brain? That's the topic today. You are, right now, if you don't know who is speaking and what's going on, my name is Walter Peters, and I have a PhD in experimental psychology. My research was on thinking about your thinking. So long before I became a trader, I was into thinking about your thinking, which is really good because I'm hoping to get you to think about your thinking today when we talk about scalping. So what does scalping do to the brain? Well, the first thing you have to understand about scalping is that it affects the pleasure area of your brain, the limbic system in general, in particular, the nucleus accumbens, which I've written up here in case you don't know what I'm talking about. It's not really necessary that you know exactly the area of your brain that is affected by scalping, but it is good to know what that area of the brain does and how scalping affects that area of the brain and what that means for your life. I think it's very important that we consider these things if we are going to do high frequency trading, which is what I'm going to, for the purposes of this, I'm going to call high frequency trading scalping, one and the same. Okay, so this is what it looks like in your brain. This is, now you don't have these colors in your brain, they're just colored so that we can see them better. But essentially, this green area right here is the nucleus accumbens, and that's what we're talking about. Okay. When you look at your brain, the more you get into the middle of the brain and the lower area down here, these are all really ancient parts of the brain. In other words, we're talking about areas of the brain that we share with other animals, such as reptiles and things like that. Whereas when you get up further, and we'll talk a little bit about the prefrontal cortex later, but for right now, we're going to talk about the nucleus accumbens, which is the old part of the brain. It's in the limbic system, and it really dictates how you deal with pleasure and pain, okay? And really what the session is all about. So let's get to it. What is the nucleus accumbens, and why is it important for the trader? Well, it was discovered by Olds and Milner. I think this was back in the 50s when they discovered this area of the brain. What's interesting to me about the nucleus accumbens, and this, from now on, we'll just call it the reward center, okay? That's what I'll call it. It's, it doesn't really create reward, and it doesn't help you to learn things without something happening. So it doesn't actually do it on its own. Something has to happen to sort of trigger things in the brain. So I don't want to give you the wrong impression here, but these guys, Olds and Milner, they discovered it in the 50s. And the way that they found out what was going on here was they, as most sociobiologists do, they found their favorite animal to experiment on, which were, in this case, rats. And they did some really classic research. In fact, if you may have even seen this if you've done an introductory course in psychology, you may have seen some of this research come up, which was they gave rats an opportunity to stimulate this part of the brain if they pressed a lever. Okay, so they're in a cage and their brains are wired up, and if they press the lever, they stimulate this reward center in the brain. What the rats did, of course, was they didn't want to eat. They didn't want to do anything. In fact, all they really wanted to do was just wanted to push that lever over and over and over again. In other words, these rats probably would have died, and rather than eating, they were happy to just keep experiencing that pleasure. Now, remember that, because it's going to come up in a moment, and why that relates to traders, in particular, traders who are using high-frequency trading systems. The other thing about the pleasure center of the brain is that it's related to sex. Okay, so if this is getting into a lot of other sort of tangent research here that's not specifically related to what we're going to talk about, but it is tangential, and it's important to note that with people, sex can be linked to both pleasure or essentially pain or avoidance, depending on what happens, what sort of neurotransmitter is released during the sex act. So what that means is that Mihai says it's very similar to scalping except with women. So what that means is that you will find that Vlad's laughing. What that means is that you will find that this area of the brain can affect your motivation towards sex. Okay. Now it's also going to do. There are other things that are involved including addiction. Now you can see that parallel when we talk about the Olds and Milner study with the rats, right, where they keep pushing the lever and they essentially become addicted to the pleasure. You'll see this in addicts, where addicts don't really have any desire to eat. They just want their next score, right? They just want their next hit of drug because they're so addicted to it. So that's what can happen here. You're talking about a substance that affects the brain, and we believe that some substances can affect other desire for other substances. So, for example, there's some research that suggests that if you were to actually have morphine, right, you might crave alcohol. They found this in rats. So it's really complex. It's not just like one thing creates the other, or one thing creates a desire for the other. It's interdependent. Stress is also something that comes into this. It can be very, very. You can affect this level of your brain if you're stressed out. What can happen is essentially what you're talking about here is a reduced response, right? And it's kind of like having the same effects that you become dependent on a drug. So let me explain something. This happens a lot with women actually. If a woman is stressed out, sometimes she will seek comfort in food, and sometimes she'll seek comfort in shopping. And what shopping does is when people buy something, when they purchase something, and it's actually so easy now with online purchases, you can just click that button and immediately you get this hit of dopamine, right? And that dopamine helps alleviate that stress, makes you feel better. You feel like you've done something and that you've taken control of your stress by reducing your stressful feelings, by getting another hit of dopamine, right? You're pushing that lever once again. We'll talk again. This is all going to circle back to traders in just a moment. But it's critical. It's absolutely critical, guys. Okay, so video games as well. Of course, it may not be something that you are surprised about. If you have played video games or seen other people playing video games, you've seen people who have actually died because they kept playing video games and wouldn't do anything else. This has happened as well. So it's very similar to an abuse, an addiction. And it seems to be related to the same area of the brain, given the research that we have here. So people get really, really motivated to keep seeking out more activities in virtual reality video games. So it's not real life. Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, and this is really kind of where it all ties in for us as traders. Mud wrestling, nice. Felix wants to talk about mud wrestling and if that's related to the pleasure center of the brain. Okay, you guys are making me laugh, man. This is great. So this is the thing, okay? When we look at functional MRIs and magnetic resonance imaging, and these are actually getting cheaper and cheaper. Back when I was in school, they were very expensive to get your hands on one, and a lot of researchers found it difficult to do research with the functional MRI because they were so expensive, and they wanted to do the research, but they couldn't get their hands on one. Well, costs are coming down. There's more and more of these out there. And what that means is we're seeing more data come in. And we know that this area of the brain, the pleasure center of the brain, lights up when a person believes that he is going to receive a monetary reward. In other words, there's anticipation, right, in the pleasure center that something good is going to happen. Now, there is a real stigma in the world about money. Most people that you speak to probably won't tell you how much money they make. And even if they do, they're probably lying, right? It's probably the last great taboo of our culture, money. They'll tell you just about everything about their wife or their husband, their kids or their job, their families, all their deep, dark secrets. But when it comes to money, they often just don't talk about it. They won't talk about how much money they have, how much they want, what do they think about other people that have money or don't have money, and what money really means to them. It's one of those things that just doesn't come up. So the reason why this is important is because obviously as traders, we have this addiction to this secret thing, money. So what traders will often do, and really guys, this gets into the way that the banks set up their trading. Very different to the way that anyone trades from home or even from part-time trader. If you have a job and you're a part-time trader, something like that, you probably don't have the same setup that the banks do. Banks have a very clear command, chain of command, and everybody knows where to fall into place, and everyone knows how much they can risk, and all those sorts of things. That doesn't necessarily happen with stay-at-home traders because we don't have anyone to answer to. So the first lesson in that is find someone to partner up with who can help you and who is going to hold you to the fire and make sure that you're responsible for your trades and for your results. And you can do the same thing for him or her. It's a great way to duplicate that banking environment that people just don't get. And it's also the reason why bank traders, when they leave, or hedge fund traders, when they leave and go off on their own, so many of them flame out. And the reason why is because they don't have that structure. They don't have any sort of responsible manager. They don't answer to anyone. They answer themselves. And that's what money, and that's why, money is secretive to a lot of people. Traders can lie and they can deny their losses and things like that. It really is the last secret. I would say it's probably more a secret than drugs and alcohol. You're probably more likely to know whether or not someone is addicted to drugs than you are to know if they're, what's going on with their money situation, what's going on with the trading. That's probably, it's probably the last sort of secret in our lives today. So, Ahmed's asking about blood pressure increase or decrease, if that has any effect. What you'll find, Ahmed, is that it's going to depend on whether you're an introvert or extrovert. So I wasn't planning on getting into this, but here's the thing about introverts versus extroverts. Everyone knows what an introvert is, right? An introvert is a person who's usually not comfortable in a crowd. This is the type of person who's more likely to stay at home and read a book than to go out to a party. An introvert is someone who is really sort of a homebody, doesn't go out and seek a lot of stimulation. They're already, and the reason why this is the case, we know in psychology from psychological experiments, the reason why introverts are this way is because they're already at a heightened state of arousal. In other words, an introvert walking down the street is very aware of his or her surroundings and knows what's going on around him or her, and is already at a heightened state, is already very stimulated just by walking down the street, okay? Now, contrast that to an extrovert. Extrovert is not. So the extrovert who walks down the street doesn't really feel like there's anything exciting happening and has to seek out excitement. So extroverts are the type of people who do base jumping, right? Extroverts are the type of people who want to get on stage and be in a large crowd, or want to learn how to sing in front of people, or be in a game show or something like that. Extroverts are seeking out more stimulation. They want to bungee jump. They want to fly a jet, whatever. The reason why they need that is because their base level that they're at every day, just sitting in a chair, for example, or waking up out of bed, it's too low. It's too boring. There isn't enough stimulation. So they need to be more stimulated just to get to a place where they feel comfortable. Whereas the introvert avoids that kind of stimulation, doesn't want to jump out of a plane, doesn't want to, drive a fighter jet or surf that 25-foot wave, because the introvert's already stimulated and actually seeks more quiet, whereas the extrovert's seeking more noise, if that makes sense. So which person, introvert or extrovert, do you believe would get high blood pressure in a scalping situation? Which person is more likely to feel like it's a stressful situation when they start scalping, enter a scalping trade? Which one? Introvert or your extrovert? Yep, you got it. Yep, so Jews says introverts, Ray says introvert, Forex Lady introvert, Steven FX introvert, Andreas says introvert, Vlad says introvert. Yep, Wagner, exactly. The introverts. Introverts are already really close to the ideal stimulation level, and extroverts are not. So extroverts are going to seek out scalping situations, like pulling the trigger on a high-risk trade and watching the money fly up and down. The introverts aren't going to want to do that, right? So the introverts are going to avoid it. And if the introvert is put into a situation where they're scalping, there's a lot of pressure and a lot of stress, that's the person who's going to have the negative reaction, the stressful reaction, and see the blood pressure go up. So that's just a good side note there. Okay, so what happens with our money and our secrets? So a trader is going to boot up her computer, turn on her trading platform, and start to get hypnotized by the quick little flicks on the chart. There's a reason why trading platforms are designed the way they are. There's a reason why they have flashing lights and they make noises. And actually, if you think about it, most retail trading platforms are very similar to what? To slot machines, right? To electronic slot machines like in Las Vegas or Macau or wherever, you're near Atlantic City or Monaco or whatever your nearest gambling center is. That's why they're set up that way, with the flashing lights and the music and all that, and the sounds and everything. They're set up to get your attention and to really, it's like a reward. Every time you push the button, you get that noise, right? Every time you take the trade, you get that noise. They're setting it up just like that. Can you hear me okay? Ashok says the sound's dropping out. Yeah, log out and get back in. Yeah, okay. All right, cool. Sound is fine. All right, cool. All right, you might have to log out and get back in, like they say, which of course means you can't hear me say that, but thanks for typing that in there. Okay, so what happens here? Each little move on the chart represents the market's total greed and fear of millions and millions of people in that point. So traders are using technical analysis or indicators or flashing things and crossing lines and different colored things and all that, just adding to this, right? This idea that, you can somehow see what's going on here by using a special indicator or whatever. It seems like a mumbo jumbo thing to people that don't know much about technical analysis, but all of these emotions are what we're looking at on the chart. When we're looking at a chart, the way I see it is it's a crowd psychology. That is a chart of hopes and fears and greed and all that. That's what we see on the chart. Okay? But traders who are really seeking out this action, who are going for scalping, they feel like they have to get in right now, right? So they feel like they're missing out. And they feel like they have to get in right now. And here's the danger in scalping, guys. Because it lights up the same area of your brain that crack cocaine lights up, because it's something that's easily feels good like sex, and because it's something that is just as easy to get addicted to as cocaine or whatever, heroin or whatever, because that's the case, you have to be really careful in how you do this. And it's one of the reasons why I don't recommend it, especially for traders who are new to trading. You just become the fertilizer for the big boys, the big trees that are growing slowly. The scalpers are the fertilizer for them. So I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying that you shouldn't or you should. All I'm saying is it's very different to other types of trading. And that's what I'm trying to impress in you with, that's the impression I'm trying to give you right now. So some traders are going to feel like they have to get in right now. They miss out. They might say things like, and if this sounds like you, it's important to note. You might say things like, I have to get in right now. Or you might say something like, price is running away from me. Or I am going to miss this trade. All of these things highlight that, you're really getting caught up in the mass emotions of the market. If you find yourself saying these things, I missed that trade, I gotta get in on the next one or whatever, that's a bad thing, right? That's a really bad thing. If you think that you can make a killing on this one because you missed out on the last one, you really need to make it up. Or if you feel like the market's moved away without you and you feel like you've got to jump in or you're going to miss it, all of those are signs that you're getting addicted to this and that you're probably not going to be a clear-minded scalper. And your dopamine pathways in your brain, they're activated every time you go for a potential reward. Not a reward, a potential reward, okay? So this is a potential reward. This is just the idea that you might make money. The most addictive pattern known to man is what's called a random interval reinforcement. Does anyone know what that is? Any people know? Have you heard this before? A random interval reinforcement, which is essentially what a slot machine is, right? A slot machine will randomly reinforce or randomly reward you. And that's exactly what trading does. We never know if we have a trading system with a win rate below 100%, which is going to be all trading systems. If you believe you have a trading, who here believes you have a trading system that's 100% winner? Because if you do, then I first of all, I would say, let me know how it goes after you trade it 10 years. Because normally those are the 100% win systems that essentially what they do is they don't take the losing trades off the board. They just hold on to them, which means that eventually you just get wiped out by one trade. But that's a whole different topic. I wish. Ray says, I wish. Yeah. Most traders want to win. More than even making money, but that's a whole other topic too. So the potential reward is what's lighting up your reward system. That's what's getting you addicted to scalping. The fact that every time you click that button, you hear that noise, you see the flashing lights, and platform, you think, okay, this could be a winner. That's random interval reinforcement. It's the same reason why people get addicted to slot machines or pokey machines, as they call them in Australia. So that is really the enemy. It's this pattern here and how your brain is set up to get addicted to this. Okay, that's the big issue here, guys. It's not anything more than that. Okay, if you get into a trade and the trade goes against you, right, and you start thinking, oh no, now I've got a drawdown. So let's just say you get take a trade on. Actually, let's fire up a chart. Let's go and fire up a chart here. Let's go to the euro and let's take a look. 5-minute chart. Okay. Now, can anyone tell me what you would do on this chart? Any ideas at all? What would you do here? Would you buy or sell the euro given this 5-minute chart? Here's a 15-minute. All right, let's find a different chart. Let's find one that we can all depend on, that we can all agree on. What about our pound? Pound is looking like a really choppy chart. Really choppy chart. Yes, it is quite choppy. What about the pound here, guys? What are you thinking? Sell, buy, buy and sell at the same time? Kiwi, just buy and hold for a year. Don't know, wait for pullback and buy. Okay, Euro Kiwi. Let's go to Jeremy. Jeremy says Euro Kiwi. Let's see if there's something clear on the Euro Kiwi. Yeah, well, there you go. Okay. Yeah. This is a pretty good chart, actually. Yeah, okay. So on the Euro Kiwi, okay, here we go. Here's the Euro Kiwi. We're looking at this chart, and we go ahead and buy, right? Stop loss is at down at 60.75. And 6101. Oh, it's a buy stop, no wonder. My stop loss is at 60.75. I'm just going to buy this sucker. I hate MetaTrader platform. I love it for charting, but I really do hate it for this. Okay, stop loss is going to go down here at 60.75. And I'm going to buy this because I'm convinced it's an uptrend. Does anyone have a problem with that at all? Okay. Okay, so it's in. Stop loss is down here. The buy order is up here. And what about taking profit, guys? Where would I take profit on this one? Any naked traders have any? We're right up against resistance because this is where all the lows are. Brilliant. Awesome. So basically, we just bought right into resistance. Okay. So the reason why I wanted to do this is I want to see what are the emotions that happen here. So I say I have to get in now. The market's really taking off. It's following this trend line. It's been going up and away, and I don't want to miss out here. This is like it's triple topping up here. It's going to squeeze and pop and go higher. So I really need to get in now before it gets away from me. But then now I'm in a drawdown, right? Like it's gone against me a little bit. This really kind of sucks. What happens if this falls down all the way down here and gets close to my stop? My hope that I had when I was worried about missing out on it turns into fear, and in fear that I'm going to lose money. And if I do take a loss and it hits my stop, it's actually going to feel worse than if I just place the trade and moved and let the trade trigger on its own. Because I took it because I was so worried about missing out, it feels really bad. It feels like something crazy. It feels like what I'm doing is something that's, it's worse than it really is. Because before I was feeling like I was missing out, and now I'm feeling like, oh no, I'm going to lose here. That's no good. And so this is what this is all about. This is what scalping is all about. Scalping is about being affected by the potential for reward. It's that potential for reward that lights up your brain. And the thing about it, let's go back to our we'll get back to our trade, but I just wanted to take an example trade to show you guys this right here. Remember our brain? We're talking about the nucleus accumbens is in here. This is where you get your addictions and pleasure center right here. The frontal cortex up here, this is where you do all your planning. So, for example, let's say you're going to Canada for the summer and you're planning your trip. Or let's say that you're going to go on a 3-day drive, and you're going to cover, 3,500 kilometers on your drive. And you're planning out where you're going to go and where you're going to stop and sleep and all that sort of stuff. That's what goes on up on the frontal cortex up here. It's not the quick, click, reward, center where you're sort of stuck in pleasure and seeking pleasure and avoiding pain and that sort of thing here. So you're not in the nucleus accumbens. You're not in the old part of the brain. You're in the new part. This is the part that makes you human, where you can plan ahead. You can think ahead. You can say, well, if this happens, we'll do that. But if it's, for example, if it's snowing when we go to Canada, we'll just make sure that we have our heavy clothes so we stay warm. If we get a flat tire on our long road trip, we'll have a spare tire in our car so that we can put the new tire on there and keep driving or whatever. That's all planning stuff, right? And this is the area of your brain that you use when you take measured trades in a higher time frame, like a 4-hour chart or a weekly chart. If you're trading those charts, you're not in the video game section of your brain here. You're not in the sex area. You're in the planning area. It's a very different thing. It doesn't light up your brain to trade the daily charts like it does when you scalp. And that is that's neurologically valid. That's a true statement. If you take a weekly chart trade, you are doing something qualitatively different to taking a 3-minute scalping trade. They are as different as ice skating and bowling. They're completely different sports, right? Completely different. It's closer to base jumping versus playing chess. If you trade the higher time frame charts, like a daily chart here, you're up here in the planning area of the brain. It's like playing chess, thinking ahead, that sort of thing. If you're playing with the video game version of your brain here, then what you're doing there is you're actually working on activating the addiction area of the brain, the excitement area. You're really getting into base jumping here and bungee jumping. It's a totally different sport, right? So it's something to think about. Wagger says there's a parrot. Yeah, I got an SMS. Thank you, Mr. C. GG says go to Colorado. Gilbert says, is it a good idea to remove the nucleus accumbens from your brain so you can become a better trader? No, but they're actually coming out with drugs to make you a better trader. So I'm not sure if you guys knew that. But yeah, so and again, what are the drugs going to do? They're not out yet, but what they're going to do is they're going to suppress you from becoming addicted to risk, right? That's what this is all about. You can already do that today without the drug. What you can do is you can work on trading from here, the planning area of the brain, planning what you're going to do if the market does this, or planning what you're going to do if the market does that, and staying away from this addiction area of the brain, okay? Does that make sense? Is that your bird? Peter says scalping gives me a rush. Peter, yep, that's because it's like a crack hit. It's like taking a crack hit, right? That's what it is. Okay, so what do naked traders do to avoid all of the pitfalls of trading, of scalping? Okay, what can you do? What can you do as a naked trader? Those of you that have been to these webinars know that what I do is I trade off of the higher time frames, almost without exception. So if you follow my trades, you know that I like to do things like trade the daily charts. Does anyone have a chart you want to look at? Because I think we should take a look at a chart right now, plan a trade based on what we see on there, and not make it a scalping type trade. Right? So what chart? Pound yen, euro yen, clear, concise plan. Yes, it is normal. We got a question here. It is normal that your heart beats a lot when you do nude scalping. Yes, it's because you're addicted to the rush, right? Just like your heart beats a lot when you smoke crack cocaine. Same thing. Neurologically, it's the same thing. Okay, let's look at the pound yen. I'm going to pull up a fresh chart. I'll show you guys how we find the sweet spots on the chart. What we're looking for are the beer bellies on the chart, obviously, as you know. Is everybody aware of the beer bellies? Why we look for the beer bellies on the chart? Very, very obvious, right? Looking for the beer bellies because where is my green and red? All right. So I'm going to go to the weekly chart, and I'm going to go to the line chart, which is what you see this blue line here. It's the connections of the closing prices. So I draw the extreme low and the extreme high, resistance and support, and then I fill in everything else. And what I'm looking for are these little bends in the chart. That's where my support and resistance is. Ideally, a place that I identify as support, like this one right here, is also later resistance. So this support here, obviously later becomes resistance right there. Yeah. And that's what I'm looking for here. Here's another one right there. There's another one here. There's one here. And here. And even here. And here. And then there's one right here. Remember, I'm using the weekly chart, and there's a very good reason for that. It's because I want to trade the daily chart. So the reason why I'm looking at the weekly chart right now is because I'm keen on trading the daily chart. I'll show you why in just a moment. Whoops. I want to trade the daily chart. And there's going to be one down here. See, support, resistance, support, resistance, support. Looks like there's going to be one in this area too. I often will miss them, and then that's why we go back down to the daily. Now I'm going to go to the daily chart, and same thing here. Just going to make sure that any of the zones that I missed out on, I'll draw in here. And I've got one right there that I didn't get on the weekly, but clearly on the daily, that's a nice level. So I'm going to go ahead and draw these on the daily. All the levels on the daily. There's obviously one here as well. Now, these are the beer bellies. These are the spots where the market has memory. The market found support here in January 2010. Then it found resistance. Fast forward to the future, April 2011. January 2010, support. April 2011, resistance. Magically, the market remembered what it did. Same thing here. Double tops, resistance, support over here. Okay, so what I want to do now is look for repeatable price patterns that tell me that the market's going to either break out, right, or that it's going to reverse. So what I'm waiting for is the market to get to these beer bellies. What do I mean by beer belly? Beer belly on the chart is if you touch a beer belly, you could just brush up against a beer belly. Your hand touches the hairy belly and you pull back really quickly. Go, oh, that was kind of gross. I just touched a sweaty, hairy beer belly, right? Or you might actually accidentally push into the beer belly, and it isn't until you squish into the beer belly that your hand is rejected and bounces out of the beer belly, okay? So that's what we have right here. Here, the market pushes into the beer belly and then falls away. And here, the market just barely touches it and falls. Same thing here, just brushes the hair on the beer belly and it falls. So you never know what the market's going to do when it hits one of your support and resistance zones. It's a beer belly. Sometimes it pushes into the belly and then falls away. Sometimes it just brushes up against it and then moves away from it. So I have to assume that the market's just going to brush up against it, but I know that sometimes it'll actually push a little bit further. So given what we know about this chart, which is, of course, the pound yen daily chart, I would be waiting for the pound yen to get up into the 173.50 area. And it is at that area that I would look for a possible sell. What would a sell look like? It would be a big red candle with a close down near the low, like this candle right here. It might be a bearish engulfing or a bearish big shadow, which is what this pattern is right here. This is a bearish big shadow. It's got one candle on the zone. The next candle completely engulfs that candle. It's got a higher high. It's got a lower low. It's got a close down near the low. And the next candle trades lower than the low of that bearish big shadow engulfing candle. So because the next candle traded lower, it triggers a sell order down there. Stop loss goes above the high. The target is the zone, which would be down here. You can see the target is achieved right there, right? It also printed another bearish big shadow right here when it came back up to that zone again and then fell. So that's what I wait for as a naked trader. I'm planning my trades. I'm not going to jump into a trade on the pound yen now, but I am going to say if it gets to 173.50, I need to watch and see what happens. I'll plan a trade there, but I won't jump into it because I feel like I'm missing out. I'm not the gambling type addiction trader, but I'm the planning prefrontal cortex, right? So does that make sense, guys? So I'm not a nucleus accumbens trader who feels like I'm going to miss out and I'm addicted to the hit of risk and the potential of making money, but rather I'm the prefrontal cortex planning trader. I'm planning out my moves. I do a lot of waiting. A lot of traders get impatient because they wait. But here's the thing. It may take longer for a daily or a weekly trade to unfold, but I've found that the win rates are higher trading naked and trading on the higher time frames than they are on the lower time frames. So I could trade the very same system that I trade on the pound yen daily chart. I could trade on the 1 hour chart, but I have to know that my win rate's going to go down, right? Now, if I'm okay with that, that's fine. But, if I go down to the 5-minute chart, my win rate's going to suffer even more. Of course, the reward to risk ratio can go way up, right? But I'm going to have to spend more time in front of the computer. I'm going to get really tired. It's even more important that I stay physically active if I'm a hardcore scalping trader. That's another topic we didn't even really touch on today, which is, one of the things about scalping is that it can be physically demanding. And if you're not in really good shape, it's like being a boxer. You can't just jump into the ring because your boxing match is on today. You have to really get ready for that. And trading is no different. Trading the shorter time frames means you better be really sound of mind and body. Otherwise, you're going to break down. The market will break you down eventually. It might take 2 years. It might take 6 years. It might take 3 weeks, but it will break you down. It's really important that you're aware of that. How to make scalping as planning. There's a lot of other things that come into scalping. Most traders aren't going to be able to plan. It is possible to scalp with a plan, but most traders are going to get caught up in the emotions. There's a couple of things that you can do to avoid it. You can meditate. You can get into hypnosis. There's ways that you can sync your hemispheres of your brain before you do these things. Lots of things you can do to sort of, get yourself set up for success, but it still takes discipline, guys. There's no way around it, right? It's the same old story. You need a discipline and a plan, exactly. it is harder to wait in the middle. So like Panda's saying, well, what about 169.23? Well, yeah, when the market's around, this area here where Pan's talking about, it is harder to wait. It's harder to trade. I like to trade from the edges. I like to trade up here and down here. If you look at some of my trades, like here, let's look at some actually. So the Euro Aussie, this is what I've been watching. I've been hoping that the Euro Aussie can get up. See where my shaded area here? This is at 1.5069. I want to see this pair get up to 1.5069, right? And then I'm going to sell it all the way down to 47.55 and 45.75. I want to see it get up there, print a bearish candle, and then I'm going to put a sell order below that bearish candle on the daily. Maybe I can get it on the 4-hour if I'm lucky. It's not there yet, right? So what am I doing this week? Am I going to trade the Euro Aussie because I'm bored? Am I going to trade the Euro Aussie because I missed out on trading it last week? Am I going to trade the Euro Aussie because I need something to do? No, if I need something to do, I'll go and read a book, or I'll go walk a dog, or hang out with somebody, have a coffee if I'm an introvert or an extrovert, right? Get G'd up on caffeine, but I'm not going to take a trade on the Euro Aussie until it gets to my shaded area. My shaded area here is my target. That's where I want to see a bearish candle, and I want to see the market trade lower than that bearish candle, and that's going to trigger my trade. And I already know, even though the trade hasn't happened, I already know where my targets are, 47.55 and 45.75. This is really how I avoid getting hooked into the gambling mentality. I plan out my trades. For those of you that like to draw, channels or whatever, I'm sure many traders have probably drawn something like this. I don't know if this is the perfect channel, but so maybe this is going to bounce around and finally, maybe it'll get up in May, or maybe end of April, it'll finally get up here. That's what I'm waiting on. Very interesting webinar has been recorded to watch again. The other thing, I think it is being recorded, Anil. The other thing that I want to tell you guys is that, how like the Wolf of Wall Street and they get really addicted to stimulation? That's what that's all about, right? I mean, it can happen like if you're in a sales environment, you get addicted to, the big sale or whatever, that sort of thing. But that's what's happening there. If you guys have seen the movie, that's what's happening. People are getting addicted to the rush, exactly like scalping, right? The other thing I will say about scalping is it costs more money to trade as a scalper than it does to trade. If I'm trading a daily chart, right? How much commission do I pay? Let's do the quick math here. And I know some of you have seen me do this before. I just want to make sure that everyone's clear. Let's say I have a 200 pip stop, okay? I have a 200 pip stop on my trade, on my daily chart trade, right? What's the spread? Let's say the spread on my pair is 5 pips, okay? Right? So if I've got a 200 pip stop and I'm paying 5 pips to get into the trade, what is the percentage that I'm paying, given my risk? My risk is 200 pips. I'm essentially paying 2.5%, right? I'm paying 2.5% to take that trade. That was the cost, right? 2.5% of my overall risk is the cost, right? Now, what happens if I'm scalping and I have let's say that I'm scalping and I have a 10 pip stop loss, okay? I've got a 10 pip stop loss. I've got a 5 pip spread, and now 50% of my risk is accounted for by the trading cost. Trading cost, of course, is the spread, right? That's your trading cost. So I pay 50%. Now, that's an extreme example. Even if we bump this up and say the stop loss is 15 pips away, it's still 33%, right? Even if I have a 15 pip stop on my chart, I got a 5 pip spread, it still is 33%, 33.3% is my commission on this trade. And the other thing I will say is that if you believe in the boogeyman and you're worried about your broker jiggling your charts around and things like that, then it's much easier for that to happen if you have a 15 pip stop. How easy is it for my broker to spike me out of my trade when I have a 200 pip stop? Not so easy, right? So to me, guys, you can see where I lie on the. Do I think it's possible to scalp and make money? Of course it is. There's more ways to make money trading than I can imagine. It's unbelievable, the opportunities. However, it's a safer bet. It's an easier game when you play with the planning area of your mind, of your brain, the prefrontal cortex. You plan out your trades. You don't have to pay as much commissions, and you often will. I often find that the win rate goes way up as soon as I move to a higher time frame. If I'm trading a 30-minute chart or if I'm trading a 4-hour chart, same system, everything the same. The 4-hour chart's going to have a higher win rate. That's just the way it goes. So hopefully this has been helpful, guys. I really appreciate your time. Mihai says, I thought this was about scalping, not about not doing scalping. Thanks very much, Ian. Thank you, Mihai. Thanks, Govert. I really appreciate it, guys. If you have any questions, you can always email me. I'm happy to try and help you out. It's Walter at FXJ. Have a wonderful evening. Hope to see you next week at the Naked Forex webinar, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, guys. Take care. Thanks a lot, Ben.